Hello, my name is Kelly Bluen. I am a certified Zentangle teacher. Welcome to 15 Minutes of Zen, where I guide you through creating a little piece of art using the Zentangle method of drawing. Today I'm using a 2" by 2" Zentangle brand tile, a Micron 05 pen, a graphite pencil for shading, and a tortillion for blending. We're using a pattern today called Crazy and Zeppel. All right, I'm going to start with my pencil. And we're going to start by putting a dot in each of the 4 corners. And then connecting those dots with a really light line. Okay, so to create this pattern, we need to make a grid. And so I'm just going to make a grid by putting some lines across this tile. So I'm going to do that. Yours does not have to look like mine. That's about as small as I want to go, though, for a shape. I don't want to go too much smaller than that. That's probably good. I feel like this one's a little bit large, so maybe I will put one across there. Okay, I'm going to switch to my Micron pen. This is such a fun one to do. So when I make this, I'm going to start in the middle of a line, and I'm going to trace that line. But every time that I get to a corner, instead of making that point, I'm going to curve. See how I curved that? And I'm going to follow this line, curve at the corner, and curve again. Also, when I make this one, I like my lines to be a little bit wiggly and uneven. Okay, so this large one here, I'm going to start in the middle of a line, curve in, curve, curve, round there, there, and there. Don't worry about getting really close to a corner. You just want to try to make sure it's not pointed. So right here, I start in the middle, curve, 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 and I always follow through by finishing that shape. I don't just stop when I get to a line. All right, this large spot here, just remembering to curve those corners, just like that. Start in the middle. I'm going to turn my tile as I go. Curving. And I have this little tiny one in the middle here, so I'm going to do that very carefully. Sneak that one in there. Again, make sure you follow through on each shape. I've got a little spot here I can put a tiny one in. I love making this pattern because it always reminds me of a stone path when I'm done. There are so many ways to use this pattern, but mine always ends up feeling like a little stone path. Curve, curve, and follow through. All right, when you're done, you end up with this kind of a web pattern in between each of these shapes. And if you started this in ink, you end up with these pretty little webs in between, which look really cool. But for today, I'm actually going to color in those spaces in between. So right here, I'm just going to ink in those areas in between the rocks. Or in between those shapes. I'm calling them rocks, but putting some ink in there. I'm not doing the outside. Just these inside areas. It's looking so cool. Okay. Once I have those in, I'm going to add some little details inside these to make them look more like stones. So very, very lightly with my pen, I'm just going to almost hover over the paper and make a couple little cracks. I'm doing it so light. I don't want to get carried away and add a lot. I do like how that looks. And then some of them, maybe I'll put just a little bit of a shine accent. Kind of give it that curved feel. Even the tiny ones get just a little accent. Okay. All right, now I'm going to take my pen and I'm just going to go around the outside and thicken that line up a little bit. It's not a necessary step, but I just like how that makes that look. You could also aura the outside, which would be really pretty. Okay. So I'm going to add a few accents because I always like to add some little accents. So if you want to add some little grass blades or a little flower peeking out, you could. I'm just going to do some mini fescue. So just a couple of these little lines that curve out and have a little teardrop shape at the end. Just a few peeking out of those cracks. Add as many as you want, as long as you want. If you want to add some little dots for some texture, you can. Okay, so now I'm going to pick up my pencil and do some shading. So for these, I'm going to put some graphite on the inside of each of these shapes. You want that graphite to go right up to that edge. So just like that. I'm going to do that on every single one. Right up to that edge. If you want, you can turn your tile and make sure that the point of your graphite pencil is pointing right at that edge so you don't have any white space that shows up. right against there. On these little ones, I'm trying not to put as much, but I'm definitely still putting some in there. You can play around with how much you want to put on them. So this to me is what gives this the look of like a little rock path with those dark crevices, and these dark edges makes these rocks kind of pop out and have some dimension. Again, turning my tile as I go. That's why I love working on little tiles and not in a book, because you can move it to be comfortable. Couple more to go. So fun. So I used to think that the drawing was the most calming part of Zentangle, and a lot of my original tiles I didn't shade at all because that wasn't the fun part for me. I enjoyed the drawing better. But then as I took some more risks and learned how to add just a little bit of graphite to each tile, now that's one of my favorite parts, and it can be very relaxing also. I spend almost as much time shading as I do drawing. Okay, I'm going to pick up my tortillion, and I'm going to soften these edges. I like to use little circular motions. And as I'm softening it, I'm pushing it towards the middle of that shape. And the goal is that the darkest is near the edge, and then it gets lighter and lighter until it's white. What you don't want is an exact line where the shadow stops. You want it to be nice and smooth. So I'm kind of pushed down hard when I'm by the edges. And as I get towards the middle, I kind of lift my tortillion, and I'm a little more light-handed as I spread that so that the middle stays nice and white. I just love how this looks. These tiny ones don't need a lot of work. Sometimes after shading, some of our lines get a little bit lost, so you always can go back and add more ink to pop your shapes back out. This looked so flat to begin with, and now it's really starting to take shape. So see here, I've got a big white space, and you can see exactly where my shading ends. So very lightly, I want to push it out a little bit more. I want it to be a smooth transition. All right, look at that. So cute. All right, as always, initial your work somewhere on your page. And on the back, date your work, and then put a little journal entry about something that's going on in your life, something that you're thinking about, something that's on your heart. I always love going back and seeing what I was thinking about as I was making a little tile. Thank you so much for joining me. Have fun.